Welcome to the Black Sparrow Media Internet Broadcast Network.
You are listening to Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a podcast about Linux, open source, and amateur radio, for everyone. Now here are your hosts, Cheryl, W5MOO, Russ, K5TUX, and Bill, NE4RD.
Well, hello and welcome everyone. You have tuned into episode number 579 of Linux in the Ham Shack, the most terrific amateur radio podcast on the internet. And tonight we are doing our deep dive episode, so thanks for tuning in. We appreciate it. And before we get to our topic for the evening, we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves. For the on assignment, as usual, Cheryl, W5MOO. I'm Russ, K5TUX.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD.
All right. Well, we were kind of searching around for topics. We came up with one that we think will be a little bit of fun, just sort of a light deep dive, if you will, for the evening. I was looking to get a guest on, but I don't know if they never got my emails or were ignoring them or whatever, but hopefully that will come to fruition for the next deep dive, if that topic remains relevant, which I'm sure it will. But for tonight, we're going to talk about a kind of, I don't want to say throwaway because it's not throwaway, but it's a distribution that's geared toward gaming and specifically retro gaming, but it's also based on MX Linux, which is a derivative of Debian Linux, and therefore, by default, it could be used as a shack distribution as well, because we know that Debian works very well in your shack, especially with the Ham Radio Pure Blend and all that good stuff. But what we're talking about now is the 3.0 release of a distribution called Commodore Vision. And the idea behind this, I guess, from the creator is that it's a gaming-focused distro, and it has tons of emulation built into it, focusing specifically on Commodore and all its variations from the 64 and the PET all the way up through the Amiga. But it also supports emulation of many other kinds as well. And then it's all rolled into a highly customized Debian distribution, which has a Mate desktop environment, also heavily customized. And of course, that makes it perfectly functional as a daily driver computer. And if you're particularly into retro gaming or emulators or anything like that, then it will be even better for you. They've done a lot of work in the customization part of it, and we'll get to all of that. But when it comes to the download, that's the first thing that Bill noticed before I noticed it, because I just clicked on the download link and didn't realize that the zip file for this thing was 36 gigs, and I assume I didn't look. Was it only the ISO in there? Because it auto extracted for me.
Yeah, there's an ISO, an MD5, and README, I think. Okay,
yeah. So, and I tried to do an install, and I wonder now if my installation failure was the same reason as yours, because my install disk was too small.
Yeah, it says minimum size for install disk is like 81 gigs.
Yeah, and I just did the default inside of VirtualBox, which is 20, which is probably nowhere near big enough, which probably also explains why it took so long to quote-unquote install, because it was not actually installing anything, or it was installing the first 20 gigs and then going, well, I don't know what to do now. But luckily for us, or at least for me, the distribution is also a live distribution, and it's also a, what's the thing I'm looking for? Like a Knoppix, like a fix-it distribution. It has repair utilities and things like that on it as well. It also has two different boot environments. You can use syslinux to boot, or you can use grub to boot. It will work either way. It has a memtest built into it, and it's put together really well. And the graphics on it look nice right from the grub screen or syslinux screen, whichever one you're boot up into. And the installation procedure is actually, from what I could see, even though mine failed, really, really simplified. Because once the distribution comes up, it basically wants to install right away. And it's only like you have to put in like 3 bits of data, like the computer's name, the domain name, and it will also do Samba if you need Samba, which you probably might want to, especially if you have a SAN or something that's storing your emulator ROMs or things like that. You would want to have access to network resources. So it does that really well. The only other things that I asked for during the install is like the time, date format, things like that. And the rest of it is pretty well automated. But before you get to that, you're also in the Mate environment, which again, highly customized. And it is very focused on the Commodore C64 environment. There's a lot of stuff that looks very C64-ish. There's a lot of like interesting little weird tweaks that I haven't seen before, and I don't know if they're part of the applications that are already built or if they were something that were customized for this. But like it uses the Cairo dock at the bottom of the screen, of course. And when you hover over the icons in the Cairo dock, they spin. And I don't know, is that something that Cairo does, do you know? Or is that something they added?
I'm not sure. I haven't used Cairo before. But yeah, since I wasn't able to actually run it for more than a few seconds, I don't know. Let's see. I'll look it up. Cairo dock. Yeah.
Maybe you'll have more on that in a minute. But let me read a little bit from the Commodore OS Vision website here about this release. I don't know who is speaking here because it's written first person, obviously from the developer, but I did not get to look up who the developer is. So if you want to find that information out, that'd be great. But the release notes say, "It is my pleasure to finally release Commodore OS Vision 3.0, which is a free fan-made Commodore-inspired Linux distribution now based on Debian Bookworm, which serves as a default installation for Commodore-branded machines such as the Commodore C64X, which is actually kind of a neat thing. I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. Available from myretrocomputer.com. Commodore OS is a retro-futuristic vision of what Commodore might have produced in an alternate timeline. The biggest games-oriented Linux distribution ever, they claim. It's featuring 200-plus free Linux-compatible games, as well as an assortment of classic Commodore games and demos. It has its own version of BASIC, Commodore OS Basic version 1, modern BASIC implementation featuring 3D graphics, built-in sprites, built-in tile maps, 2D and 3D physics, and user types. Future development will be geared towards compiling software for the original C64 and Amiga hardware, with Commodore emulation all set up, a plenitude of pixel-based graphics editors, as well as an Amiga mod and C64 SID trackers. Why not build your dream retro game on Commodore OS if you're still into building retro games? And then they talk about the Commodore OS Central, which is a repository or a community for getting information about Commodore OS and all that. Commodore OS Vision 3 now features a retro-inspired settings manager for configuring ROMs and emulations, starting options, animated wallpaper, which I guess you found, retro
yes, I did find that.
and much more. And it's filled to the brim with nostalgia. Gigabytes of retro goodness await you with hundreds of classic Commodore games, demos, animations, and chiptune music to experience all within a few clicks. So from my live version experimentation, it feels a lot like a Mate-based desktop on a Debian distribution. You have a lot of the same system utilities and access to applications. And of course, it's Debian-based, so you have access to all of the repos and add-ons, and you have access to add apt and all that stuff, so you can add your own repos. But it does come with a ton of emulators pre-installed, and not just Commodore ones. I think if I remember right, there are like 10 different Commodore ones, the C64, the PET, the VIC, a couple different Amigas, the 128, and on and on and on. So if you're definitely from the Commodore past, and that was the platform that you used, you'll find yourself right at home here. But it also supports emulators for Atari, NES, Sega, MAME, and a whole bunch more. So if you're into the retro gaming, this is definitely a distribution for you, and it's built like an OS instead of like the RetroPie stuff, which is built more like a kiosk and for setting up upright machines and things like that. Actual arcade style experiences. This is more to have a desktop that actually does the same things. I did not get as far as connecting like a controller to it, but I'm assuming they've made that pretty simple. And everything has like a custom touch to it. Like when you start up a terminal window, it looks like a Commodore 64 screen. So, and when you like, it had NeoFetch installed on it by default, and when you do a NeoFetch, it came up in that sort of blue on blue background and looked very, very Commodore-y. The menu bar at the top also has Commodore customizations, like the search bar has a Commodore logo, and it uses all of the sort of miscellaneous blue colors that give you the feeling of a Commodore environment for sure. I did reference the Cairo dock at the bottom, which is like any other Cairo dock, except like when you hover over the icons, they spin in 360 degrees, which was kind of a cool touch. And also when you do things in the environment, like you open windows or shift between windows or whatever, there is a lot of 8-bit audio that is associated with your key clicks and, movements and whatnot. So you're definitely getting a very retro experience when you use this distribution. However, because it's Mate on Debian or MX, you also have a full-featured desktop environment and a full-featured distribution. So you could use this for your daily driver as well if you wanted to combine your normal, aesthetics and normal tasks for your daily job, or even if you wanted to run it in your ham shack, you could do both and still have all the emulators available to you as well. Unfortunately, Bill didn't really get a chance to play with this, and he's trying to get it on bare metal. And are you getting any headway with that or no?
Oh, it's still copying to thumb drive, so I'm just kind of looking at some other content and stuff like that to try to decipher everything that's in there. And there's you were mentioning all of the emulators and stuff like that, so they have like because the install or the ISO image is so fat, I think it comes with quite a bit of stuff. Probably some stuff that's probably not redistributable, but I won't claim that because I haven't really looked at it that much.
I think that's not the case. I think they keep that stuff separate. There are links on the website to where you can download those emulator game ROMs. Yeah, I'm not sure any of them are actually included in the onboard install, because like when I brought it up in the live environment and I double clicked on the emulators came up fine, but the ROM lists were empty. So there are some pointers to help on the installation. So it may be a case of you have to go in and configure things to actually access those, or maybe you have to set up links to remote sites, or you have to go find them, download them, and then reference them in whatever emulator you're using. But I did not see them out of the box.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. But yeah, I see they have emulators for Atari, Commodore, DOS, Linux, Microsoft Windows, Nintendo, Sega, Sinclair, Sony. So like pretty much all the retro loaders, including the new loaders too. So like they have a Play on Linux installed there. So they have a full install of Wine Tricks and everything else. I saw Steam was also loaded on there. Discord is actually loaded on there by default. There's a lot of stuff on this image. They can probably pare it down quite a bit. Maybe offload it to, maybe like, do you want to download all the extra stuff? And maybe that would help with the size of the file and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I did not see anything. I didn't do like a huge in-depth search through the installation procedures, and I did not click on the help file for doing the install, which probably would have told me that a 20 gig partition was too damn small. But I think we found that one out a little bit late. But oh well. So yeah, obviously, if you're going to do it virtual, you want to have a decent size partition. As Bill said, at least 80 gigs. The sound, at least in VirtualBox, since that's the environment I was running it on, the sound worked right out of the box. It linked up, and I had audio from the VM without any issues. That hasn't always been the case for me running VMs, but in this case, it was just fine. I guess we should talk about the sort of annoyances at the first part where it has the text-to-speech engine where you have to click through a couple of different disclaimers and all that. So there is some weirdness at the beginning, and you should probably be aware of that. But once you get past that and into the live OS, into the installer, or if you just want to use it in the live version, it feels very, fresh and capable right out of the box. So let's see, what else can we say about it? Oh, there are links to the forums. From what we can tell, they're broken, unfortunately. The community site and the link to the instructions for installing are also broken for me, but I think they're also on that forum. They're on that same website. So probably need to email a developer and see if we can get that taken care of, because that would be kind of nice. One thing they have mentioned on the website, and a couple of links to other websites, the one we mentioned before about the retro gaming, where they actually have built Commodore 64 platforms with the keyboard. They look exactly like a C64, but in the back, there's an open slot where you can put in a mini ITX motherboard so that you can have what looks like a Commodore 64, but it's actually a full-blown computer. And I think the idea behind that is you then install Commodore OS Vision on there, and so you can have a full-blown, modern computing experience, and also have something that you could just fire up and look like a native C64 or 128 or whatever, which is kind of cool. And some of those are actually kind of neat looking. And I think I don't know if this one actually has like light up keys and stuff, but if it does, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty neat. Yeah, that's on the myretrocomputer.com, it looks like.
There are also links to some resources for getting ROMs for this that are off the main site. They're actually showing like a cost behind downloading the ROMs, like on C64 Forever and Amiga Forever. I guess you can go through those. I don't know how legit they are. There are also other ways to get ROMs, of course, without going to these websites. And that is true for all of the different emulators, not just the Commodore ones. And it was nice that they included the modern emulators and game engines like Steam and Play on Linux as well, too. So you're not limited to just retro gaming here. You can, if you've got a decent enough system, you can play all the modern stuff, too. So overall, it was a pretty cool experience, even for what limited use I had of it. It's to the point that I definitely want to install this on something and give it a real run.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I'm patiently awaiting USB file transfer to throw it on a real laptop and see what it does. It definitely looks interesting, and considering you can use it for anything else because it is running Debian. The only thing, if you're running like very modern hardware, whatever, you might need to side load a new kernel in there so you can get if you have the latest greatest hardware, you'd want the 613 or greater kernel.
Yeah, what was the kernel in there?
6.5 is what's on the ISO.
Right, 6.5. Yeah. I don't want to necessarily recommend that people like upgrade. I didn't look and see like what the upgrade paths were. I didn't see if there was a software center, if they had their own repos for their customizations or anything like that. Once you start updating the underlying OS, you can break the customizations if they get out of sync with whatever the custom repos are. I don't think I can bring this up.
Yeah, I did run an apt update while it was up for a little bit before I did the install thingy that broke. And it has a lot of different repos it's attached to. So that's probably due to all the software that's installed on that particular image. But I didn't see anything out of the ordinary in that list.
No, but they have made it very seamless. Once you get a distribution that's linked to a lot of third-party repositories, it can get kind of messy, but it looked like overall everything was pretty tightly integrated, and I didn't see any issues, like at least running the software off the live distribution. I'm going to assume that the experience of the installed version is pretty much the same, just faster. So, and there's a lot of stuff in there that, especially a lot of those some of those emulators like aren't in the standard Debian repository. So they've got to go out to third party sites and stuff like that. And it looks like all of it was pretty well put together. I think they spent a lot of time making sure that even though the distribution is large and has a lot of stuff integrated into it, that it feels very easy to use, and I didn't notice any like weirdness through the install or through running what software I did.
I hear sound from it. Maybe it's going to actually load up here on my virtual machine.
How long has that virtual machine been running?
Well, I just restarted again. I just bumped up like the video settings and stuff like that. So we'll see. It's the disk is spinning. Come on, show me the desktop. Show me the desktop.
Yeah. Luckily, this will all cut down to no breaks in speech at all in the post. So I'm curious to see what experience you have when it comes up. Because once I heard the initial sound and got through the first disclaimers, I think there's 2 of them. Everything went pretty quick after that.
Yeah, it did the sound this time, and it hadn't done the sound before. And I'm still in VirtualBox while I'm waiting. For the drop to copy over there. It's at 78% for those of you keeping score. But yeah, this is not changing from the splash screen, so I'm having a feeling it's not going to do it, even though it played the sound.
I assume you have a properly sized disk this time.
Yeah, I did. I attached like 120 gig virtual disk to it, so I figured that should be enough for it to do whatever it needs to do. This is why it's not really a super deep dive. And this is definitely, your mileage may vary with this particular one. It kind of reminds me of, not as bad as, Deep End, kind of one of those weird distributions that is really cool looking, but is like, probably don't want to use this. But considering this is kind of a little hard to kind of get going, especially in a virtual environment, you would think this would be the easiest place for it to kind of pop up.
I know you're having trouble getting it to start up, but I booted it like 3 times in my virtual box environment, and I didn't have any issues with getting it to start up. So, yeah.
It just hates me. That's probably what it is.
Probably not, but I do think it's a your mileage may vary kind of thing. And, of course, I'm pretty sure my install issue was just my virtual disk size had to be much too small. So...
Yeah, especially if it's an 80 gig requirement. So,
but on the whole, I mean, I really like the look of it. It wasn't obnoxious to me too, because sometimes you get into custom distributions and they go a little overboard on the customization and to the point where it's just ugly and cumbersome. But I did not get the feeling from that, and the customizations that were there, I thought were actually cool. They kind of brought out the nostalgia in the modern operating environment. So they took the modern tools and made them feel retro, but still functional, which I give them some definite props for.
Yeah, like the choice of fonts and stuff like that. It really kind of, drums up that sense of nostalgia when you're using it.
And I do like the fact that they have a lot of the developer tools, like the retro developer tools that you can have access to, so that if you really want to do something with this thing and build modern retro games, it's something you can do. And I would like to experiment a little bit with that custom version of BASIC and see what they've added to it. Because obviously they've given you access to a lot of modern features like 3D graphics and stuff like that. And some of the old technology, like pixel mapping and sprites and stuff like that would have been available. So it sounds like it could be a very powerful thing to use if you wanted to develop modern retro games.
Oh yeah, it has things like Libra Sprite installed and stuff like that. So a lot of those tools that you would have to go find and stuff like that, it already has for doing it. Like, I could see, I'm just sort of zooming through a video here of it. and all your programming stuff. It has Commodore OS Basic. It has Commodore OS Basic Studio, Gambus 3 Basic 256. Oh, hey, oh, it's doing something. I can see the screen over here. Okay. Wow. No. Okay. I just did the okay. Turn off the stupid wallpaper for one thing.
See, I didn't see the moving wallpaper. That was something you got that I didn't get.
Yeah, let's see. How do you turn that off? Oh my God. Please stop. I know, I just saw them do this. Let's see. Okay, well, I hit escape to get the check for installation media out of the way. And then I'm going to turn down the sound so I don't hear the stupid sounds.
They're not stupid sounds, they're retro sounds.
They're retro sounds. I know. I'm sorry. But yeah, the wallpaper is like literally a video, and it's moving, and it has a sound and everything else, which is a little disturbing. But now I can actually see everything here. That's really cool. Okay, so where was I at? I was at programming stuff, right? Yeah, so Gambus 3 Basics 256, SDL Basics, Scratch, Visual Studio Code's on there, Godot engine, Godot. I don't know how to say that. So that's gaming engine, CBM Programming Studio, x86, Fuse Basic, Code Blocks, IDE, Unity Hub, so you can get the Unity, and DB Browser for SQLite is in there. It has some interesting sound stuff installed, including like the Amiga Mod music player and tracker. Has Ardor already installed, Audacity, Winamp clone, of course, XMMS is in there, and QMMP is in there. You also have an Atari VCS 2600 music trackers installed. Just a bunch of random stuff. OBS Studio is actually installed too. This is why the image is so big. It's got the kitchen sink installed. And let's see here. All the Commodore emulators here. Commodore 64, the VIC-20, the 16 plus 4, the 128, the PET, the CBM2, the Commodore Amiga using the WinURE, and also the FSUAE arcade Commodore Amiga. They also have Amiberry Commodore Amiga emulator, and the Commodore 65 using XEMU. And yeah, all the game emulators, I think we kind of talked about those. Yeah, the only disturbing thing is the stupid wallpaper. And I know it's here somewhere. Jeez, system preferences, look and feel. Other? I thought for sure there was a specific thing for the stupid wallpaper, but now I don't see it. Let's see here. Dun dun dun. No. Okay, I'm going to close the installer. Oh yeah, when you close Windows, they explode. That's pretty funny. Oh, Lord have mercy here. Wow, yeah, this thing has just the whole kitchen sink is in here. This is crazy how much stuff is actually installed here.
Yeah, it might be nice to have them put in the ability to kind of pare down what you get installed with it instead of literally just being the kitchen sink. It's nice that they've done the legwork and found all of these third-party applications that are handy for all of the retro gaming and development and stuff like that, and including some of the video editors and all of that kind of thing. It's nice to have all of those things, but you may not want all of them right up front. So maybe something like a task cell or something like that allows you to sort of not choose certain blocks of these things to install might be nice, especially if it's things you're not going to use. But I mean, overall, it's put together really nice. I really like the way it looks. I did not get sucked into having to see the moving wallpaper. I don't know if that was my VirtualBox settings or whatever disabling that, but overall,
possible. I did find the button though. It's in the system Commodore OS and animate wallpaper toggle.
All right, good. So yes, it can be disabled. Excellent. But
Yes.
overall, I was really impressed, and I do want to install this on some bare metal so I can give it a real good run. And since it's a fully functional Debian distribution, like we said, I would just probably keep it on there for the emulators and for, whatever else I want to use the system for. I mean, I've got a computer over here that would be perfect for it. The one that I demoed Aurora on when we were talking about Aurora in the last deep dive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd like to give this a spin. I like it a lot, and I think we could say that it's at least a 4+ on the ham radio, Shack readiness score because, or the
it's
LHS radio. Yeah, because it's Debian underneath. So, I mean, obviously it'll work for you.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll load up a laptop with it, and if it works, maybe I'll bring that to Hamvention, and you can see Commodore OS on my laptop.
Yeah, I definitely think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, so that looks really cool. Yeah, this is it's definitely a neat and kind of one to kind of look at, and hopefully they can pare down the installer so it's not so unwieldy. Yeah,
but overall, I like it. I like it enough to give it a further kicking of the tires, so to speak. And maybe if you come to Hamvention, we'll have one of these fired up and you can see this for yourself. Or maybe we'll just demo it on YouTube or something like we keep saying we're going to
do. Yeah. With all its ham radio goodness, right?
Absolutely. You can have your C64 emulator programming BASIC while you're running some FT8 on the same machine.
Yeah, that would be hot.
All right. Well, unfortunately, I think that's about as far as we can go with this. Maybe we'll revisit it again as a follow-up on YouTube or something like that, or do something in Hamvention. But in the meantime, I definitely think especially if you're a retro gamer, but even if you're not, maybe give this one a try. Just be aware that it's going to be a fairly sizable download and that you'll need a fairly good-sized standard partition to install it to until they come out with version 4, which allows you to select the things you actually want. So, and Steve says he votes for a YouTube demo. So, okay, we'll see what we can do. Hamvention's coming up real soon now. So it'll probably be up to me if it's up to anybody, because Bill's going to be on the road here starting really soon. But
yeah.
But anyway, that's Commodore OS Vision version 3 out now. Check it out. Obviously, development will continue, and they will be updating. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of kitschy, and might be worth giving a shot if you've got some time and just want to play around with stuff, and especially if you're a gamer. Check it out. All right, and with that is really it. Oh, and of course, the links to the various resources that we have, even the broken ones, will be in the show notes. Hopefully, we'll get around to mentioning the fact that those are broken, and they'll get around to fixing it and all that. And I guess we'll just move on from there. Check out the show notes for links to everything, including some videos and the thing about the Commodore 64X, which is that mini ITX-based Commodore 64 computer for those people who really like the look of the C64. So, and with that, that brings us down to announcements and feedback, which we had none of, and except that we want to put out there that if you want to help out the show, you can do it through Patreon, PayPal, buying merchandise, and of course, subscribing on YouTube. And there might actually be something over there to see other than the episodes, because those are always there.
Yeah, for sure.
And we do have a few subscribers, supporters, and live participants to mention for tonight, so we'll go ahead and mention those on Twitter. We had Left Coast HR, which stands for Left Coast Ham Radio, so thanks for joining us over on X. On Discord, we had Pyreworm, Spider Bob, Finordi, and Black Colonel. On Mastodon, at ON6ZQ and at Scott. And in the live chat tonight, we had Brian, KB3ORR, Steve, KJ5T, and Tony, K4XSS. So thanks to everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Hope to see you at Hamvention in just a little over a week as of this recording. So it's coming up real soon. And with that, we'll let you get back to whatever it was you were doing. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a supporter if you are one. And thanks for just being a part of Linux in the Ham Shack. We appreciate each and every one of you. And with that, we'll go ahead and get on out of here. This has been episode number 579 of Linux in the Ham Shack. And for the on assignment Cheryl, W5MOO, I'm Russ, K5TUX.
And I'm Bill, NE4RD73.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Linux in the Ham Shack. LHS is a community-sponsored podcast. Live recordings are Sunday nights at 8 o'clock Central Time. Our homepage can be found at lhspodcast.info. You can support the podcast via Patreon at patreon.com/LHS We're also on Discord, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and Mastodon. Contact us via email at info@lhspodcast.info or via voicemail at 190954777469. That's 1909 LHS show. We also have merch. So until next we meet, remember to always heed your hedonism.